delighted now to invite to the stage our first keynote speaker, Jonathan Ballon. Jonathan comes to us from Intel, but more importantly, he's been a catalyst for driving industry alignment to the Internet of Things for a long time. At General Electric, and where he helped create the concepts of the industrial internet, at Cisco, and now at Intel, where he's general manager of Intel's Internet of Things group. Exactly the right person to come to the stage and talk to us about how to apply internet technology to industrial systems. Jonathan.
No, I get a good feeling, yeah. Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling.
Great setup for what I think will be the premier event for IoT, the IoT Solutions World Congress. Welcome to Barcelona. And, you know, I want to make sure that we keep this as interactive as you can be with 4,000 people in the room. So we've actually selected one of you to participate in the presentation this morning. So before you fasten your seatbelt for a really fast 30-minute ride, if you reach under your seat, one of you has a Post-it note, and you will be engaged in participating in an unprepared, unrehearsed way in the session today. So take a second or two and see if you are the lucky recipient. Okay, I'm curious, are you the kind of person that when given the opportunity to participate unrehearsed in an event like this, how did that make you feel? Were you a little excited? Were you hopeful that you got selected? Or maybe just a little bit nervous that you might be the one? If you had that feeling, you know, remember that, because that's the feeling that I have every single day working in IoT. This is, as Richard, I think, pretty clearly painted, quite simply, the single biggest technology-enabled opportunity we've seen in history. It's bigger than the Industrial Revolution in terms of the economic impact it will create on global GDP, and it's bigger than what we've seen with internet technology from 1994 until present day. The numbers are staggering. I think we all agree on that. And you know, when I come to events like this, you know, you see a lot of videos and you see a lot of concepts, and they seem a lot, you know, futuristic many times. You know, a little bit out of reach. Maybe 5 years from now or 10 years from now, those things may materialize. What I think is interesting about IoT, and especially about what you're going to see on the floor of this show, and certainly I hope in the next 30 minutes of this discussion, is that people are deploying real solutions today that are generating real measurable impact, that are changing industries and changing people's lives. This isn't some idea to be realized over the next 10 years. There are real examples of things that companies can engage right now. The other thing that I would note is that when we talk about alignment and engagement, you know, there's one thing that we know about IoT that we've learned over the last 6 or 7 years is that no one company can do it alone. It really requires an ecosystem of complementary companies, technology, business, and the end user to come together to create the value. And whether you're talking to Cisco or GE or IBM or Accenture or Schneider or Bosch or any company that's leading in mindshare and implementations in the market, what's consistent is the vision. Everyone agrees of where this opportunity can take the industry and take society. Yet, despite the fact that everyone has the same vision, we argue over somewhat irrelevant points. Yes, it's a $15 trillion GDP growth opportunity if you believe GE. But some people say, no, it's actually not 15 trillion, it's only 11 trillion. And some people will say 50 billion devices are connecting to the internet over the next 5 years, and others will say, well, you know, we did the math and it's actually not 50 billion, it's 35 billion. And some people will say the market's growing at 20%. No, it's growing at 23.5%. The point is not what's the, the accurate info 2 digits behind the decimal point. It's the fact that we agree that it's huge. It's an enormous opportunity. I think we need to stop debating exactly how big it's going to be and exactly when it's going to happen and start climbing the mountain, because this is a journey and we need to get started. And there's a lot of companies across every industry that are taking the first steps to start realizing some of that value. And so I think it's important for us, especially in forums and like this Congress, to change the conversation. Right? Let's stop debating how and how big and start talking about how do we execute? What are the first steps we need to take? What are the tools that are available to us? What team do we need to assemble to begin this journey? And how do we chart a path where we can mitigate and manage our risk, but not completely avoid the opportunities by not moving forward? So one thing is clear, the slope of the climb is steep. Let's stop debating that. Let's stop debating what the weather conditions might be and establish a base camp of operations so that we can move forward. So a lot of people ask us, whether it's Intel or any of the other leaders in the market, how do I get started? And what does the path look like? What are the steps that we need to take to get started? And we typically break it down into 3, I think, pretty discrete and simple phases. And phase 1 is, quite frankly, connect the unconnected. We know that the new source of value, the new oil, so to speak, is data. And we need access to the data. Once we have access to that data and we've identified where it resides, we can then start to harvest or mine that data, extract it, refine it, and turn it into real value. And the volume of data is important. It's not like the old days where storage costs prohibited us from capturing and saving and collecting everything. We know that that's not an issue anymore. So data lakes create an enormous source of value. Yet only 15% of the equipment that has been deployed in our environments is actually generating data. We only have a small view into how devices are performing. So for us, we look at how do we get data off of existing equipment, which may or may not be replaced for years to come. And that's really about deploying gateway devices with sensors to pull data off of existing equipment, pulling it into a data solution, reasoning over it, finding insights, and deploying some value. This is base camp for pretty much any company, whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're in healthcare, in transportation. Getting access to your data should be job one if you haven't already started. The second way that we're doing this is we're embedding capabilities into new products and new machines that are coming online, and embedding that same type of functionality into the device from the moment it's deployed. And that's true of medical devices like MRI machines and glucometers. It's true with pallets that are used to ship our goods and services. We're embedding compute and connectivity into everything, even streetlights, into our cars, into ourselves. The second phase of the journey is how do we get intelligent, interconnected things? So it's not just about a one-way flow of data off a device that may signal to us how it's performing so that we can prevent that unplanned downtime that Richard spoke about, or that we can do better asset management. But it's about a bi-directional communication of information from the device to the cloud and back. And then we have the ability not just to optimize the performance of a single device or machine, we have the opportunity to optimize a fleet of machines or that are learning from each other, right? And whether that's one particular deployment of a wind farm, for example, or it's spread out across a whole portfolio. Then we're starting to get even richer information and more data that we can reason over. But that's not the end story either. The real opportunity, and where some companies have already made this trek up the mountain, is to software-defined autonomous machines. This is where we have deployments of technology embedded in devices where they're self-learning and self-healing, and they learn from their environment and from the circumstances in which they operate. They integrate into the operational environment of your business. And it allows the employees that had been managing these devices to focus on a higher order of value. And as Richard said, what we've seen through every technology-enabled revolution, from the Industrial Revolution to the Internet Revolution, and now with IoT, it creates jobs, and it creates a higher value class of jobs on the aggregate, and that rising tide lifts all boats, and it's measured most succinctly and efficiently through GDP and growth in GDP on a global basis. So when I think about autonomous software-defined machines, a great example for this are automobiles and cars. We have technology now that's going into cars that allows them, not just with basic safety features, which we've been doing for over a decade, like anti-lock brakes or lane change assist, but now we have vehicles that can park themselves. They are self-aware of their environment and can navigate physical space. We have cars that avoid collisions and can make split-second decisions, not just about speed, but about their physical location on the road. I'm not sure you're aware, but your car, and I would probably say this is true for most people in the room, your car has more lines of software code than the Hadron Collider. Your car has more lines of software code than the operating system running on your PC. Your car has more lines of software code than all of Facebook. It is a mobile data center, and the amount of compute capability that's going into the car is staggering. And it's not just about compute, it's about now the connectivity of that vehicle to the cloud and the types of data and analytics and services that can be deployed as a result. It's starting first with making your car more safe and you and your family in that car more safe. But think about when those cars have the ability to communicate with each other and communicate with the environment in which they're operating. Then we start to think about some major societal benefits, not only for individuals and their productivity and safety, but for the efficiency of the urban environments that we live in. And we'll talk about that more in a second. You think about what's happening in the vehicle, and you can apply that across a number of different categories. Think about drones. Everyone loves to talk about drones. My CEO is a fanatic about drones, and it's not because they're cool toys. It's because they have the opportunity to extend our capabilities and to perform functions autonomously and with great efficiency. Imagine drones equipped with cameras, with analytics on that camera, that can do pipeline inspection and look for cracks or leaks in a gas or oil pipeline. Imagine drones being deployed in an agricultural context to survey land, to deploy fertilizer, to monitor bee populations and pollination. These are not crazy ideas. These are deployments that occur and exist in the world today. In fact, you can see some of those demonstrated, like the bee example in the Intel booth. Simply stated, IoT will impact every single industry, and this path is relevant for every one of them. Let's take a look. So last Sunday, the New York Times, I'm American if you haven't figured that out, I read the Times, and they love to talk about gadgets and toys and what this means, and they put it in the context of IoT. And so you see on the left here a device that hit the market recently that the New York Times ripped apart by saying we have too many things. There's too many gadgets. Because this device, you know, I'm sure it has a target market, but let's talk about what it does. You buy it, You plug it into the wall in your home, and it listens for your smoke detector to go off. And if your smoke detector goes off, this device will call your cell phone and let you know, just in case you weren't home. Now, that could be of value to people, but the point that I'm trying to make here is not, is this a good device or not? The point is there's this proliferation of gadgets targeted towards consumers that's capturing the mind share of the media and of analysts. But yet, if you look to the right side of the slide, you see that the smart home is only 10% of the IoT opportunity, yet it consumes 90% of the conversation. I think it's the people in this room that focus on the industrial categories, manufacturing, energy, healthcare, the public sector, transportation, automotive. These are the segments that are going to create that $15 trillion worth of economic growth, and these are the segments that are driving the majority of the investment and the value, and I think it's up to us to change the conversation, not so much towards how these are going to benefit company A or company B, but how company A or company B benefiting from these technologies is going to make the world a better place. So when healthcare providers harness the power of IoT and the data and the analytics associated with that, it's not just that they're going to drive a better economic output for their shareholders, it's that they're going to drive better health outcomes for patients. And that when companies drive more efficient energy use across the grid and reduce our carbon footprint, that they're creating a better planet for our children and our grandchildren. These are the stories that we need to be talking about. Because IoT has relevance for everyone on the planet, and I like to call it IoT for life. I think this is a set of messages that as an industry we can get around and talk about the real, tangible, societal benefits. Not technology for technology's sake, but technology that can fundamentally take us forward into a better world. Extending our time as humans on the planet through better health treatment, better insights into disease prevention and cures, insights into how we can be more energy efficient with our fossil fuels and limited resources, whether that be oil or water. Insights into how we can reduce automobile accidents, how we can increase the quality of our air and our water, how we can produce more food to feed the planet with higher quantity and quality. These are the things that I think I get excited about and why I have that kind of nervous, excited feeling in my stomach like hopefully you had when you reached for that Post-it note. Because to me, this is an opportunity to focus what we do on things that are going to make a difference for generations to come. And these are things that I get excited about it. I hope you're feeling the passion. So while a lot of tech companies are putting dislike buttons on their web pages, I think, it's incumbent upon us to focus on investments that are going to make a real difference. So let's take a look at some examples. I like to start with smart agriculture because there's nothing more basic than feeding the planet. But we're not having a conversation about how risky our current position is in terms of food production globally. If you believe the United Nations, we will have 10 billion people on the planet by the year 2050. That will require a 70% increase in food to feed the planet. There's two ways we can do that. One is we can increase the amount of food production, and the other is we can reduce the amount of food waste, and food waste is a huge issue. And I'm not talking about the half-eaten plate that your kid leaves at dinner that goes into the trash. I'm talking about up to 40% of food that is wasted during the production and distribution process, getting it to the store or eventually onto the plate. You know, I live in California, and California is a major source of food for the entire country of the US. In most agricultural regions, on average, about 70% of clean water is used in the agricultural process, raising crops, raising cattle, processing. But in California, it's 80%. 80% of fresh water in California is used to grow food for the state and for the country. And what's amazing is that 10% of all of that water is used to grow almonds. Think about that. That's pretty incredible. In fact, an almond requires an extraordinary amount of water. This single almond, well, this is a Marcona almond, by the way, which we do grow in California, but this is the best prop example I had in Barcelona. To grow a single almond requires 4 liters of water. 4 liters of water for this. And that's before you take it out of the shell. If you want to take it out of its shell, you need to use another 4 liters of water. In fact, almond milk has become very popular in the US. I'm not sure it's popular here, but if you want to create a single liter of almond milk, that will require 1,200 liters of water to grow, shell, and process that almond milk. It's staggering. So when we think about precious resources, yes, we talk about data is the new oil. Water is going to be the new oil as well, and we need to apply technology in ways that can help us preserve this natural resource. So you see on the slide a rice paddy. So let me give you an example of a real deployment that we've done with partners to showcase how technology can make a difference. Growing rice is a medieval process, literally. It has not changed in a couple thousand years. And for many countries, rice is a primary food staple. And in Malaysia, in particular, where we did this deployment, they have not enough local, domestically grown rice to feed the country. And so they import a huge quantity of their rice. And as a result, there's high variability in the price of rice. And we know that in emerging countries, feeding a family can take anywhere between 20 and 40% of household income is spent on food. And this was proven in Malaysia that because of the high variability in rice prices, they were spending anywhere between 15 and 40% of take-home income on feeding the family. Not a great way to plan for life, and certainly not a great way for the country of Malaysia to be self-reliant. So we looked at their rice growing fields, and we said, what can we do differently? How can we apply water sensors to measure the moisture levels in the soil? How can we measure the nutrient levels in the soil? How can we look at the air quality, tie that into weather data, and do predictive assessment of how much water needs to be entered into these rice paddies? Because the way it's done today is a guy wakes up early in the morning, he walks out to the rice paddy and he turns a crank, he lets all the water in, and then at the end of the day, he lets it out. And they flood these fields. So we equipped the Malaysian rice paddies with sensors across everything we could measure. And we deployed an automated system that now regulates the egress and outgress of water into these paddies. And here's what's amazing. And this is the part of the story that you should feel excited about. Rice paddies in Malaysia typically generate 2 crops a year. After we instrumented technology into these paddies, within 6 months, they were generating 3 crops a year. That's a 50% increase in rice production. Oh, and by the way, they're using 10% less water in the process. The more data that they collect, the more they're able to refine the system. They believe that by the end of this year, they'll be at 4 crops per year per paddy, doubling rice output and effectively paying for that technology implementation within its first year. But it's not just about growing produce, it's also about raising cattle. You see here, we've got one of our partners, Keenan Systems, and in a moment I'm going to introduce Gerard Keenan, who's a friend of mine and a customer of Intel's, who's doing some remarkable things with farmers to help them drive a better outcome in their cattle farming. And by the way, in case you were wondering, that is not Gerard Keenan, who you'll see in a minute, but a very fine-looking cow nonetheless. So why don't we travel to the farm and take a look at what Keenan Systems is doing.
Keenan started here in 1978 to bring new machine-based solutions to farming and the development of a smart way that would guide a farmer in how to mix particular ingredients. That's been a huge breakthrough.
The Keenan feeder mixes and chops material to make up a nutritional diet which is used to feed the animals on farm.
We want to make it easy, we want to make it precise, and we want to make sure that we're presenting the correct diet in front of the animals every day.
It eliminates waste because you're feeding the animals exactly what they need every day.
Big advantage of this system that all the information that's going in through the machine, through the weight clock, is brought back through the cloud, back into our computer system and back into the technology centre that is within Keenan so we can monitor the actual performance.
We now have real-time information coming in to our systems. We're able to have their systems backed up on cloud computing.
We're sending information, we're getting information back. We know that they're doing the right thing, they know they're doing the right thing, and they're linked into a world of knowledge. And their knowledge is linked in back to us as well. And we're seeing a real change around the world in terms of people really looking for solutions.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Gerard Keenan to the stage. Gerard, I think what you and your company are doing is fascinating. You're taking an industry that largely hasn't embraced technology, and you're applying insights and analytics to change the outcome for farmers, large and small. So the video did a great job of showing how you're improving the feed mix and the quantity of feed. Tell me, how does that solution work?
Well, an optimized feed converts better, more milk or more beef for every kilo. Farmers are dealing with a huge amount of variation, weather, types of feed, forage change. So where smart technology has really helped us is that we've got real-time data now. We're monitoring what's going on, and we've got real-time change. So something is out of line, we're able to change it straight away. So it's an estimated 20% excess feed going into cows globally. Or you can turn it the other way around, 25% more milk is possible from the same feed. So it's a huge opportunity. And the technology and the expertise is enabling us to support the farmer in hitting what's possible.
Okay, so you're using the technology to help optimize both the mix of food, because you've got nutritionists, but you're also using data scientists within your organization to help them reduce the quantity. So you're affecting both the quality and the quantity of feed. So that clearly benefits the farmer, but who else is going to benefit from that type of solution?
Absolutely. There's a huge opportunity through the food chain, and the food chain is under pressure. And the opportunity comes from processors, retailers, farmers, in getting more consistent quality spec milk and beef. This is really a huge area of collaborative opportunity. And for example, in the UK, we're working with Sainsbury's, the major retailer, who are really supporting their suppliers in using technology to improve the efficiency and the quality outcome, so that the consistent quality meat for consumers, and efficiently produce spec beef. This is vital. The opportunity through the supply chain is much bigger than just on the farm. And it's a great place to encourage collaboration. And the data that's now available and is going to be available creates that environment.
This is amazing. So, I mean, essentially you've taken a company that was creating feeding machines for farmers, and you've turned it into a smart agriculture solution that not only benefits the farmers in terms of their efficiency, you're increasing the quality of the output, which is felt throughout the entire supply chain, from the distributors to the grocery, all the way to the end consumer.
Yeah, well, we're not doing it on our own. Obviously, we're collaborating with others. There's a lot of expertise, there's a lot of know-how in the whole industry. So we're seeing this as a platform to really secure much bigger improvements as time goes on, and not displace people. We may be changing the outcomes that are better, they're more efficient, more profitable through the chain, but we're not doing it on our own. And of course, the bigger, the wider we can make this. If you come to the food chain, clearly the variation that's on individual farms is much greater on a proliferation of farms. You now have the ability, which in the past was only possible by consolidating farms into one place, to transfer this knowledge to thousands, tens of thousands of farms. That's huge.
So, I mean, a lot of people wrestle with, some of the upfront capital investment required to deploy solutions. So I could see how a large farm would be able to afford, to take on some of these highly instrumented, feeding systems that you deploy. But, the majority of food that's being developed in countries like Malaysia that we just saw, or in India and China, it's mostly the small farmer.
Yeah.
How do they take advantage of this type of technology? Has your business model been forced to change as a result?
Our business model is being changed, and is changing with others, including working with yourselves to explore new ways to get it to all farms. It's not enough to be just servicing the top 25% of farms. It's not relevant. It's got to be relevant to all farms. That's the objective.
That's awesome. Gerard, thank you so much.
Thanks very
It's
much.
great
Thank
working
you.
with you.
Thank you.
Cheers. Hey, so if you're interested in smart agriculture, the Keenan solution is fantastic. We have other examples in the Intel booth. We've done a smart greenhouse solution with Accenture that you can see in the booth, which is an automated growing environment for greenhouse farms. We also, as I mentioned, have a demo which looks at how do we measure and monitor bee populations, which are critical in the farming industry. So take a look at those two solutions. The bee example we did with our partner Dell. All right, let's move on to healthcare. This is a subject that impacts all of us. In fact, 860 million people around the planet have at least one chronic condition. And the medical industry, the healthcare delivery industry, by and large, has been a late adopter to adopting technology for a number of reasons. Everything from highly regulated environments to very complex diseases that we don't yet fully understand, to the managing of patient privacy. But one thing is clear. Individuals and consumers are taking charge of their own health, and we're seeing that through the whole movement around the quantified self. Anything that we can measure about our bodies, we are as consumers. We're wearing the devices, and we're measuring and monitoring what we can, because if you don't measure it, you can't change it. So now we've got this opportunity where on the edge, where someone like me is the edge, right? We have an opportunity to apply the same principles that we're doing in industrial to the person. Because I'll tell you, I don't want any unplanned downtime. I want predictive maintenance on my body, right? So my doctor, my healthcare provider should provide an asset management solution for my heart, my brain, all of the organs, the assets that are important to me. So these same ideas that we're applying to the industrial context apply to us as individuals. And, the path to addressing these is, I think, well understood in the medical industry. It's a distributed care platform that goes from the healthcare provider all the way back into the patient or the consumer in their daily lives, and having data and information shared throughout. And it really does start with data, right? We need more data about ourselves, and we need to break through some of the constraints around the sharing of data in a health context, because there's a quid pro quo. There's a value exchange. If I give you my data about my body, about my DNA and genome sequence, if you're going to deliver a better health outcome to me or to my children, you can have it. It's yours. We need to get to that value exchange in healthcare so that we can start moving things forward and stop treating the individual device, i.e. the person, which is where we are now. We're in the base of that mountain, connecting the unconnected, and get to the point where we have interconnected insights into how our bodies perform. So one example that we're bringing to market with partners is in the area of remote patient monitoring, right? So how do we go beyond just the hobbyist quantified self and get into more of a clinical data set? And so how do we then attach the data that's coming off of the devices being used in the home or in a nursing facility around chronic diseases that impact, as I said, 860 million people on the planet, and get data off of glucometers, and data off of scales, and data off of blood pressure cuffs, and EKG machines, and CPAP machines, and all of these devices that so many people use in their home to measure and instrument their bodies? How do we get that into the cloud so that doctors and researchers can reason over it and look for insights? Remote patient monitoring is a great place to start because it's an acute problem, both economically and from a health point of view. Economically, we now readmit 1 out of 5 patients after their discharge from a medical center. That's crazy. 20% of the time when you get discharged from a doctor, you're going to come back within 30 days with the same and/or worse condition. It's economically costly, and in the US, we're the worst, by the way. In the US, this problem costs the healthcare industry $30 billion a year in inefficiency. So there's a good incentive for them to get this done, but more importantly, it leads to a better health outcome for patients when we get this fixed. What we've seen is when we can actually remotely monitor patients' vital statistics, blood and other things, we're getting somewhere between a 30 to 50% reduction in that readmission. Obviously, huge benefit to the healthcare industry and a great benefit for patients. The reason why we need to address this problem now is it's a growing problem because, as we know, our aging population are the primary consumers of our health resources. And right now, around the world, there are 600 million people that are age 65 and above, but that number is growing. We have a lot of countries with aging populations, and by the year 2050, there will be 1.5 billion people over the age of 65. We need to get in front of this trend and find ways of taking healthcare outside of a healthcare environment and into our daily lives where it's safer, can be personalized, and tailored for the individual. So here's another way that Intel is helping to change the conversation, and this is around cancer. Treatment of cancer is, at best, an art form today. It takes months to get a proper diagnosis, and we have come up with a program with leading medical providers around the world that we call All in a Day. And we hope to have this complete in the next 5 years. And the idea behind All in a Day is that in a single day, a patient can be diagnosed, have their entire genome mapped, all 3.2 billion data points, and have a personalized treatment recommended on the same day. Today, most patients don't get their genome sequenced. If they do, it takes months And the treatment is trial and error. Yet we have so many people afflicted with this disease. We have so much data at our disposal. There's so much we can be doing to find the case studies of patients that are being treated well and apply those to the broader population and derive insights. So we have an opportunity to take lab data with real patient data and drive a transformation enabled by IoT that can address cancer. So I'm going to make a shift now to a relative topic. I talked about privacy in the area of healthcare. And a lot of people are concerned about infrastructure privacy and how do we ensure that the data coming off of machines is secure. And you may have seen last month at IDF we announced the Enhanced Privacy ID, which is a way for us to feel more confident that the data that's coming off of machines is secure and authenticated. Today, you may have seen this morning, we announced a partnership with Toshiba where we're going to be deploying critical infrastructure protection with Toshiba on things varying from transportation to industrial to healthcare. So now we'll have the ability to embed deeper security into these devices like MRI machines and CAT scans, PET scans, X-rays, so that we can feel trust that our data is being protected. And when we talk about imaging equipment like MRIs and CAT scans, there's a lot of computer vision that goes into the analysis of those images, right? There's algorithms that are written to look at pictures of our body and help us to understand what's going on. But the idea of computer vision extends way beyond healthcare imaging equipment. In fact, computer vision technology, in my view, will be the ultimate sensor for IoT and is impacting every industry.
Imagine if Intel changed your vision of the world. You'd be able to monitor natural resources, spot ways to increase crop yields, and focus on building and sustaining a better, safer future. Your space would have a sense of intuition. The door would know when you left the office, and your car would see you coming. You would intuitively know how to avoid traffic. Work would be less of a routine. Your perception at work would make you Employee of the Month. Your home would recognize whether it was you or the mailman. Your pool would sense if a loved one was in too deep. And together, you would embrace the unexpected. Now the ordinary has become extraordinary. Intel Inside makes for a better experience outside.
I love this photograph. I saw this when I went into one of our customers' offices in Munich earlier in the year, and I was blown away. Not just because I'm from San Francisco and this is the Golden Gate Bridge, but it's just awesome to think that I've been living in the Bay Area for 20 years, and I never would have suspected that there was a camera all the way up there monitoring traffic going across the bridge, counting the number of cars, helping to provide insight into when maintenance would be required based on usage, looking for stolen vehicles, keeping the community safe. So do you remember when I asked you to look and see if you had a Post-it under your note or under your chair? Let's bring that person up. The person who had the Post-it, if you could stand up. Here he is. Okay. How are you doing?
Hello, Jonathan. Hi.
What's your name?
Sebastian.
Sebastian. Hi. And where are you from?
Germany.
You're from Germany. And,
yeah.
Where do you work?
Well, I work for Bosch.
You work at Bosch. What a coincidence. So you picked the right chair, man.
Yeah.
Because I was hoping to do a Bosch demo, and you got the Post-it. So great.
Right.
Obviously, no accident. So what do we have here? We've got a racetrack simulating a road. I see a
Right.
camera, I see a computer and a monitor. What are you going to show us today?
So we have a small security system here. So we have a camera monitoring the racing track. We have a recorder recording all the data from the camera. And we have a small client which can be in the back office somewhere across the country where we can really monitor the racing track.
Okay, so historically, we've had lots of cameras in different environments, whether it's an airport or it's a campus, any public space, and we've had, I just imagine, people sitting in a room looking at tons of monitors looking for things. But that's not really necessary anymore, is it?
Yeah, it's not necessary. So we have, on the one hand, the increasing resolution of the camera. So that's a 4K camera, 8K is just around the corner. And nobody will ever look at those amount of data. And we also have the challenge to get all this data across the network to the client. And that's what we call with our Diva IP solution. There are solutions to overcome these problems. If you want, I can show you a short demo. So
let me just make sure I understood the resolution issue.
Sure.
So let's say we were looking at Barcelona Airport. Like in the past, we may have had thousands of cameras deployed everywhere to capture every angle. And now what you're saying is with 4K image resolution, now moving to 8K, we get a much broader and richer view into what's happening.
Right. So you get more details with less cameras then.
More details, less cameras. Great. Okay, so we're getting all of this rich digital high-def image.
Right.
What do we do with it?
Yeah, well, the easiest thing is to analyze that already on the edge, so on the recording system. And this provides a help for the operator to really use the system. So for example, this is the live image right now, but if I want to go back in the recordings, this is what I've recorded. I can easily select a time frame there.
Looks like there was an accident.
Yeah, that was backstage. So I can select the time frame there. So this is recorded material. And if the operator, for example, wants to know if a specific object crossed the line, I can just draw the line there. Go ahead, hit search. And here we go, we have all the results quite easily.
So basically you took a bunch of cached video or stored video and you were looking for the example of when something crossed a line.
Right.
And then it automatically went into all of that video content and pulled out the images, stills, as well as the actual video content to show you when that event occurred.
Right.
Okay, so I could see this being used in a host of applications. You could use it certainly in a traffic context. You could use it in terms of people moving or crossing some border. But I mean, certainly that must be challenging to move a 4K video content over the network into the cloud. So how do you manage, the bandwidth constraints and the costs associated with moving huge video files?
Yes. So basically what we move is only the portion of the image that's really necessary for the operator. There's a transcoder technology built in there, so that's the technology behind that, which optimizes to the bandwidth and only provides those information, the stills and the optimized video feed to the operator, depending on the bandwidth.
Okay, so said another way, you're capturing very dense, high-quality video on the camera itself.
Right.
You're moving some of it to the edge of the network and storing it locally.
Yep.
And then only sharing the metadata, which has a lower bandwidth requirement, into the cloud.
Right, right.
Okay, but let's say we're trying to do something that requires real-time awareness. I mean, it's one thing to look back on what happened earlier today or last week, but what about critical applications that require an instantaneous response between the eye of the camera and the action that results?
Yeah, so you can still do that today with the live view of using the gateway device, but in future we are hoping to move this into the camera. So we're getting rid of the gateway device, having all the technology, the analysis in the camera, becoming a real edge device, recording the video, and also like doing the analysis on the edge.
So basically the camera is becoming a computer.
Yes.
With compute capabilities, connectivity,
right.
The software algorithms that are running in the camera to provide that instantaneous real-time response. That's awesome. Thank you, Sebastian. Okay, why is that important? not everyone here is managing a city infrastructure and monitoring traffic, but it's important because what's happening and being driven by these digital security solutions is impacting every industry. In manufacturing, people are employing cameras to do quality control and look for defects in real time. We're seeing cameras being put into cars where today we have one in the rear that helps us park. The ones that are hitting the road today have 12 all around us, and they have the ability to manage and monitor things in 3D and in real time make a course correction to save someone's lives. We're seeing cameras be the ubiquitous IoT sensor, and it's occurring in retail, it's occurring in smart building, across every category. So video is something that's going to make urban environments safer and more efficient, but there's other services that are occurring in the city that are necessary to make it a smart city, right? Things such as air and water quality monitoring, traffic systems, waste management, first response, and many other things. And these things all require connectivity. We need to have the ability for all of these billions of devices to be able to communicate with each other and with some central operating system. So today, I'm pleased to announce that we are partnering with Keynote, who is the leading provider of IPv6 wireless mesh networks, to deploy smart city infrastructure around the world. And more specifically, announcing that we are engaging with Reliance Energy in India to deploy a wireless mesh network across the country of India, starting first in the city of Mumbai, where we will instrument smart meters, street lights, and other urban automation equipment. This is a way for us to drive a standards-based, horizontal communication solution that allows for highly reliable, very low power requirement connectivity so that any device can be managed with any service in any environment. And we're super excited about this partnership with Keynote. So, all right, a lot of case studies, a lot of data. You're going to experience even more over the course of this week in the sessions and on the floor. I just want to compel you to think about your journey for IoT. And while some companies have already established a base camp, others are still formulating their strategy. They're gathering and assembling the right skills for their team. They're evaluating and selecting tools and charting a course. So I just want to encourage you, as you think about your path, starting with connecting the unconnected. What does that mean in your business? How do you then translate that to a system of interconnected, intelligent devices with a goal of getting to a software-defined, autonomous world? I hope this has been a stimulating conversation for you and a great kickoff to what I think is going to be the premier event for IoT, the Solutions World Congress. Have a fantastic week.